It's a real treat to get to hear from Tuulikki today as part of the webinar series. Addie, who's the Secretary General, isn't here to introduce the series. This comes under his leadership, and he's really done a great job of giving us opportunities like today's to hear from our colleagues. I can't think of a better person to hear from. Tuulikki, in her as a young journalist, has done just about everything IFAJ has to offer. She's a regular model for all the things that go on. She's been a young leader. She's been on the Exposure for Development program in Brazil. She's spoken to the emerging Brazilian Guild. She's won the Star Prize. Really, it's a treat to get to hear the insight from such a talented and accomplished young colleague. So I'm very, very eager to listen, and I'm glad we're all here to share this. And then it, like the other webinars, will be archived on the IFAJ website, so we have an ongoing resource. So Tuulikki, the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Steve. I share my screen. Just a moment. Okay, is everybody seeing the presentation?
Yep.
Yep, we're good.
Oh, good. So thank you very much, Hugh and Steve, and welcome everyone to the webinar, The Beauty and the Beast of Digital Media. So I kept a bit similar presentation in Brazil a few years ago, or now it feels it's been ages ago since things and the world has changed a bit after that. But so I hope today we're going to have a nice discussion about digital media. Of course, the topic is very broad, so I'm going to focus on certain aspects, and I hope we can, since I'm not keeping myself as an authority in this topic, I'm more just sharing my personal experiences and hope that we can discuss more topics together. So just briefly about myself, I'm a journalist working in newspaper Maaseudun Tulevaisuus, which is published 3 times a week and online every day. The topics include agriculture, economy, forestry, rural lifestyle, for example, horses, hunting, gardening. And there are several formats that are tailored for professional farmers. For example, now there is growing season report, which started a few weeks ago and is published until the end of growing season, which here in Finland lasts until around September. And then there is Global Market Report, which is published every week, and it has different commodity prices, for example, fertilizers and so on. And then online popular services, weather services, and also another price is relevant for farmers, for example, wood prices. And it's second biggest newspaper in Finland, so the articles are not only for farmers. So right now, I hope you could all sit back and think a bit, what are you doing right now? Because, for example, if I think what I do usually when I'm on my computer, I'm not just, when I was, for example, preparing this webinar, I checked what I was doing in my other tabs, and I was, for example, reading emails, and when I got new messages from Teams chat, I open them, and then sometimes I open my Facebook or other social media, and then since the summer is coming, I also have a keen interest in gardening, so I open quickly some gardening sites and sneak there. Because what I want to say, that as a journalist, we are all in the competition of attention, and that competition is quite fierce. There is a lot of things going on grabbing our attention, and we really need to make an effort to kind of get that attention from our readers, and that effort is bigger, I think, than it was in magazines and newspapers. So I guess we can all agree that the environment of journalism has changed and is still changing. If I think myself, when I started in Maaseudun Tulevaisuus in 2014, it was mainly about newspaper. So the online thing, digital media was minor, and articles were very short. And in that time, I remember my biggest fear was to make an error. And if I did, I felt I was failing, or I did a big failure as a journalist, and because I had to make a correction to next newspaper. But today, I think in digital media, the biggest fear starts to be, as a journalist, that I am boring, that I'm irrelevant, that the content that I create is not getting readers, it's not interesting. And one of the main kind of cages where I can put my article in is that I create a bad headline, and that's why the article never gets readers. And this is the main topic I think I'm going to talk with you today, is the headline. There is another aspects as well, but we focus today on that. And yeah, and as mentioned, we don't compete with just another media, we compete for people's attention with all kind of things, like cats, YouTube stars, and Esther the pig, which is familiar, I guess, especially for Canadians. And of course, digital media allows us to use more different kind of tools, for example, video, tutorials, tests, but I'm not going to talk so much about these tools today, but it's just one of the beauties, one of the possibilities that it has created as an act journalists. And since the year has been pretty rough, pretty different, it seems that COVID has speed up this change a bit. According to CNBC, digital advertising spend grew over 12% in 2020. It doesn't say, though, what is the share of media from this growth, but some growth has certainly happened. In March, for example, people in US spent, according to Nielsen, 215% more time reading news online. And this was also seen in Maaseudun Tulevaisuus. We broke some record last year and got, especially during these first months of COVID, but also during the rest of the year, the number of readers was significantly up. And I guess among you, there are some people who write mainly on magazines, and then maybe some people who write only for digital medias. But then there also might be somebody who is like me, who is writing for both. So when I write an article, it comes first out usually in newspaper, and then there's going to be online version of that. And one main thing in that process is to rewrite the headline so it suits for the digital media. And this is also part of my job to rewrite other journalists' headlines. So my colleagues write articles, and then I rewrite their headlines if needed. Not necessary, but in some situations. And it's good to acknowledge that making an effective headline is not a very easy thing to do. It's time-consuming and sometimes very frustrating process. I don't like to do it last thing in the afternoon when you're already very tired. It's something that, if possible, it would be nice to do when you still have some brain capacity left for the day. And it's often easier with somebody else, because at the point where you're trying to make the headline for online article, you might be too tired to think of the topic yourself anymore. And well, according to scientists, there are some like features which actually have a significant impact on the performance of a headline. According to this Dutch study, these features are, for example, personal and possessive pronouns, negative words, and questions. However, this study did not have very high accuracy, so it's like difficult task to have a model for this purpose. It's not like we can create a machine that creates perfect headlines for all the purposes. And when we think of headlines, I guess many of us also might think the word clickbait when thinking like how to increase the attention. And according to Cambridge Dictionary, clickbait means that articles that are intended to attract attention. But it has, I think, most people think it has this negative sense where it typically means sensationalized or misleading headline. And this is not something that I encourage you to do. So we're not talking about clickbait, we're talking about improving the headline in journalistically good manner. But all in all, I think agriculture has what it takes when it comes to creating interesting online content. Agriculture has personal stories. It has very controversial topics like food politics and animal welfare. It has big numbers and big machines. It has cute animals. It has all these very visual topics as well. And just for an example, I picked the most popular ag articles from Maaseudun Tulevaisuus in 2020. So just keep in mind that these are translated by me, so there might be some errors, and also that these are produced for Finnish audiences. So these articles were interesting by Finnish people, but not necessarily people in other countries. It's not certain. But the first headline was, terrible mistake. Beef farmer paid 75,000 euros excessive taxes. Account management company made a mistake. Same problem might concern dozens of farms. And here just the very first word here, like you see in the research, is a negative word, terrible mistake. And it creates this very strong emotional feeling right away. Also, there's a big number, which I think is quite often quite effective, 75,000. And same problem might concern dozens of farms. It gives this bit personal feeling if the reader is farmer as well. And second is a bit same category, fatal accident at Juva. Juva is a place in Finland. Man got stuck, I think, well, maybe I'm not sure if I wrote it correctly. Got stuck during forest maintenance work. Wife who tried to help died. And again, the fatal accident, very like negative feeling in this headline, but it gets the attention. And what I like in this headline is that it has this very short beginning, fatal accident at Juva. It's very like the most important thing is in the beginning of the headline, and it's very short. If this headline would go like, man got stuck during forest maintenance work in fatal accident at Juva, I don't think it would be as effective as this kind of punchy beginning. And the headlines, I think it's good to put the most important thing in the very beginning and maybe use this very punchy few words sentences. And the third one, could donkeys help protect cattle in Finland? Abroad, long ears are used as a protection against canine predators. And here, as in the research also said, the questions, it starts with a question. And even though this topic is, I think the donkeys were from Minnesota. So this could have been like in Minnesota, donkeys are used as a protection against canine predators. but it seems very like far away. I think it's always important when we travel to other countries to do journalism is to try to bring the topic and the headline near to our target audience. So in this case, Finnish people. And in general, all topics that have something to do with wolves are in Finland very popular. People read them a lot because it's a very controversial thing. And then there is the cat, and more pigs than in whole Finland. China is building world's biggest piggery. Here again, I think it was a good choice from the journalist to compare it to Finland rather than just writing how many pigs there are in this world's biggest piggery in the future. And just because I don't want to talk just about the headlines, because it's not just about that. There are some kind of risks or things in agriculture journalism that might be more serious problems in digital media than in magazines. And I think visual monotony is kind of one of them, because when you share the article in anywhere, the photo is the first and the biggest thing that is shown. And if the photo seems somehow dull or unprofessional, I think it doesn't kind of give, even if the article itself is very vivid and good, it doesn't deliver the message. And these are photos taken by me. I think the one on the left, the two on the left side with the man in them, they're from Brazil, and the one on the right is from Netherlands. And well, they're not very bad photos, but they are not photos taken by photojournalists. The one on the left is very typical photo from a dairy farm. Man like kneeling next to the cows and keeping this silage on his hand. And it's very like artificial situation, and it's understandable kind of photo in its dullness. We want to get the man and the cows in the same photo, but at the same time, it doesn't really like tell much. And another photo is from the field, and I know it's hard to get good pictures from the field because it's very like flat and everything, but still it's a bit like commercial looking photo. It looks more commercial than journalism, and it does it's also quite dull, but nothing is really happening. And I just wanted to show you, if I go into these same situations with professional photographer, what these professionals can get out of these situations. So this first one is also from a dairy farm, but this is taken by Sanne Katainen, who is a professional photographer. And I asked her to tell a bit about these photos. And this first photo is also, it's in the same situation. The farmers are next to their cows. It's very like typical photo from a dairy farm. And it's from the European Network of Agriculture Journalists NI trip 2017 from Finland. I think at least Chris was there. So, well, the photographer said, like, even though it's typical, I think these kind of behind the scenes photos tell something more. Often these kind of photos where people are gathering around somebody are taken from fans meeting their idol or politicians, which makes this photo also a bit funny. It highlights that we are witnessing something really important and interesting. I like this photo also because it's kind of, it seems very open that we are, as a media, we're telling like everything that is happening because we're taking this step back and showing the whole situation. But yeah, it's like a bit different approach. And also when like professional photographer is taking photo from a tractor, it might be something a bit more. This is taken during harvest of corn. And she said that technology and machines are a big part of agriculture, but showing different details from the machine is often more interesting than showing the whole machine. Like here, it shows the cutter, I think the word is in English. And the tractor is not moving, but it gives still the very dynamic feeling because it's taken with the wide angle lens. And the third one is from the field, where the farmer couple is showing us the properties of high quality soil. And they also use their sense of smell to study it. And connection between the farmer couple is charming. And this photo is a good example on how even small action can make photo for more informative and interesting. So because I know that in digital age, it's easy to like think that we can, because we all have cameras in our pockets, the photojournalism doesn't matter anymore so much. But I still would like to kind of highlight the meaning of that, because if we want to still like seem relevant. Another kind of deadly sin, or so called, is ignoring the bigger picture. And this is something that happens, at least for me, very easily. I go in my agriculture journalism goes to in these very small details when it doesn't feel it's only meant for a very specific audience. But I think one of the advantages of digital media is the fact that we can sometimes write to a wider audience. We can think like, okay, instead of writing just for farmers, we can write also to people who eat, who are interested about farming in general. And I hope we can kind of, because in the magazine, you always write to this very, very specific audience, but digital media is kind of breaking these boundaries. And I think that's great. And something that is, at least for me, hard to avoid sometimes is kind of clinging from this bit desperate attitude where there's only problems. I think digital media or online is like thriving from these inspirational stories. This is from Washington Post. A growing number of young Americans are leaving desk jobs to farm. And that's why I think, especially in digital media, it's like important to try to dig these positive stories because they seem to get attention as well. And another thing that is, because media or digital media is so much about social media and so much about personal experience, is also to keep the personal experience also inside the ag journalism. Like, okay, we can tell, often when we go to farms, we ask a lot about numbers and how is the milk quality and how much they get harvest from this and that, but also how to include how the farming itself feels, like how it feels to wake up very early, or how are the family relations, and these kind of human interest things are very kind of important, and you can deliver a lot of facts if you can put, as a herd animals, we tend to get interested about this kind of emotional topics more, I guess. So that's one thing that I would encourage to keep in mind. Just very briefly, I just wanted to include these different tools. There are a lot of tools, but these are just few ones that I find useful. And one is Riddle, which I use to create tests and quizzes. And especially when there are like long holidays or there are not so many agricultural news, it's nice time to create tests. For example, this was quite recently about different working dog breeds that farmers have to recognize which dog breed is this. And yeah, they are often quite popular, and they're not, you can embed them in your article quite easily. So, and Riddle is also not very difficult to use. And also Google Analytics, I guess there are people among us, quite a few, who are familiar with this tool. And even Maaseudun Tulevaisuus is already quite big from Finnish perspective. It's still using the free version of Google Analytics. So you can go pretty far with the free version of Analytics, and it's quite addictive. You can compare the last year and this year and see what was the most popular article of last week. And it's almost dangerous tool because you can get so easily just hooked by following just Google Analytics all the time, but it's still useful. So you can use it to follow the traffic in your website. And Because journalism or media, online media, is not just about single articles. It's about balance between different topics. And this is a list created by web producer of Maaseudun Tulevaisuus by what would be like very successful day, very like well-balanced day on our media. And if it would be a perfect day, there would be at least one story related to society, news story. Then there would be a soft story about animals, then editorialized point of view, practical advice like how to fix this or that, and topic based on video or photograph, and piece of news commenting something happening in social media, and then a human interest story. Well, this rarely happens that you get all these in the same day, but it's just an example to show like how it shouldn't be just soft stories or just hard news about society, but it's like maybe the best outcome would be like combination of different kind of stories. And yeah, so as a preliminary assignment, I asked you to send some articles that got good attention in a way or another. And thank you very much for that. It was a pleasure to really go through your articles and get the great variety of journalism IFAJ members are making. So I will show some of the examples of these articles and tell a bit what the writer, him or herself, have said about the article, and then make a few comments of my thoughts. So this first one is from Chris, from Belfast Telegraph, and the headline goes, "I could watch golf until the cows come home. Ballumen, a farmer," I'm not sure if I said correctly, "becomes an online hit with the hottest seat at the Irish Open." And this came with the backstory. Chris said that for him, the writing human stories always attract more attention. But of course, it depends on the target audience. And this story went viral after a farmer out checking his cattle decided to unfold a chair in his field, pour a cup of tea, and watch the golf championships taking place across the river. This was during COVID-19, when no spectators were allowed on the course, but Billy had the perfect legal ringside seat. I think this was a great example from the many perspectives. First of all, the photo is great. It's like grabbing the attention immediately. There is the golfer, but he's not, but the center of the attention is the man with his cows, who also seem like almost the spectators of the show. And then, there is the personal pronoun "I could watch," the interesting citation quote in the beginning of the headline, which is also a nice way to grab attention. And also I like the idea of talking about online hit. It's kind of creates this buzz right away that we're talking something that is already like being very interesting to many people. So why not read it yourself? So it's it's very like, it's kind of like this small event, but still saying something about this very weird year in a very personal way. Another one is article by Jesse Scott in Successful Farmer with the headline "Farmer Test, Farmer Approved, UTVS." And so Jesse told that we've done several variations of that article over the years, doing product reviews and test teams for UTVs and ATVs for farmers. The article typically do well when they're first post, but they continue to get a high amount of traffic from search. The articles are ranked highly when users search for the best farm UTV or best farm side-by-side, for example. I think this is kind of also a very nice example, like how to make very successful article online, that good article can have a long lifespan. We can have one article that gets a lot of readers in 1 or 2 days, and after that, nobody reads it. Or then we can have articles like this that have relevancy for a long time, and people come back to them again and again after searching from Google. We sometimes have been written articles just by searching like what people search from Google and then try to answer to that question with the article to get to the Google search results. But that's not very common, I hope. But this is, yeah, even though the headline is quite short, it still says it all. And I like the way how it says our farmer evaluators. It feels like very personal rather than just saying like evaluators. There's 3 of the new TVs. And example 3 is from Glasa Desele. I'm not quite sure about that either, by Darinka Sebenik. And I tried to translate it, but maybe Darinka, if present, can tell if I understood it correctly. I translated it. It means like making farming less bureaucratic. And this article actually made an effect because it showed that new provisions of this certain law were harmful to the farmers, or at least some farmers. And following the announcement, matters began to move in the direction, and a number of NGOs joined the campaign to change the harmful articles. The Ministry of Agriculture has agreed to start changing before it goes to the Parliament and put it in the law. And I wanted to put this article last because I still would like to kind of note that clicks are not just measure of success, even though in a digital age it sometimes starts to feel like that. Even though a cute cat might get 100,000 or million clicks, it doesn't make it meaningful content. I hope that agriculture journalism is still about, should still be about like writing about meaningful things and writing about what farming is in today's society and how it affects all of us. And this should happen even in the age of digital journalism. Yeah, thank you. So.
Thank you, Tuulikki. Very good. Nice pictures, great headlines. So anybody have any questions or comments that they'd like to make? You can raise your hand and then you can ask directly. We're a small group.
So well, I don't know if I'm supposed to raise my hand, I'll just start, but you know, we talked about search a little bit, but I'm wondering if you have any insights about like the types of articles, or the types of headlines that do well on social specifically, or if you guys have a newsletter, you know, that for us tends to be really good for news articles, but some of our human interest ones do really well that way. So just if there's any differences or tips you have for sort of those different platforms or different traffic sources. Well,
I used to have, but Google has changed it because we used to have, for example, hashtags used to be like quite effective way if you use these certain tags. But today Google has changed its changed so that these tags don't work anymore as well as they used to. But I think the headline is one of the most important in these days, not the tags anymore. But yeah, I don't have other insight about that.
I noticed that you're in it may be a Finnish style. I noticed that the headlines at the beginning, they seem quite long, quite lengthy. And
Yeah,
I don't know whether that's because you have long words in Finnish or whether that's the style of, because some papers it's 2, 3, 4 words maximum for a headline.
yeah, that's normal. I think that's example, Helsingin Sanomat, which is the biggest, they can have like their headline can be a whole sentence. They are like very long.
And so that is effective with the
Yeah.
audience?
At least for Finnish audience. That is something what I have actually paid attention that for example, in US articles, they are like few words, very, very short compared to Finnish articles in general. I think in all main medias, short headlines are quite rare. But it would be interesting to hear from you, from other countries, how is the situation? What kind of headlines are used in, like in general, in main medias? Are they short or long?
Well, you can put some comments in the chat. Nina has a question as well.
Hi there. I'm also from Finland, so I just want to comment. I used to work for newspapers like 10 years ago. At that time, we used to have really short titles or headlines. And at this time, yeah, the recommendation is that you really put the whole sentence because that's how it competes. I mean, most people read only the headline. So at least that way they get the info. So I think it's been changing during the 10 years.
Okay. And do you ever post stories without a photo digitally?
Never.
Always a photo.
Always a photo. That's like the rule. How is for yourself? Do you post without the photo as well? Do you see if there is change in performance in that sense?
I'm just asking the question. Right.
We always post photos. We always post photos too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So should you post a bland photo if you don't have a good photo? Is that?
Yeah. That is actually some humor topic as well, because there is a lot of crime news. And
Yes.
this crime news, they use always this, or quite often, because they cannot really tell anything, they use these very dull photos where you see just a police logo or something like that.
Yes.
And then they always use the same photos. And there was this one guy who actually printed all those photos on his wall and wanted to show how ridiculous it is to post these photos that don't really tell anything just because
You have to post a photo.
yeah. But yeah, that's kind of a must, I guess.
Steve, you have a question.
Yeah, Tuulikki, I was wondering, you alluded to it a moment ago with checking, comparing photos, but do you do A/B testing, where you'll test two different headlines or two different photos, and do you see, I guess, trends in what seems to be working with your audience?
I have been hoping that we could do that. It's done. I know it's done in Yle, which is the biggest media, and it's done in Helsingin Sanomat as well. But we don't have had the technology to do proper A/B testing. We do so that if some article that we know should perform well, but it doesn't, then we switch the headline quite often. And I think in some medias, they say that they can switch the headline even 10 times or more if it doesn't perform well enough.
It's a lot of freedom. That's actually a really neat capability.
Yeah, I know it's like many journalists don't like that because they have a certain message they want to deliver with their article. and then somebody else switches the headline over and over until it's like quite provocative and not necessarily something that they wanted it to have. And yeah, so it's not always pleasant pleasant process for everyone.
That's a good point.
Any other questions? So there's one in the chat. How does one find a digital outlet for freelance articles? Do you pitch the idea to the media outlet first or submit the finished article?
Well, I'm not the one who would have much experience for this because at least with Maaseudun Tulevaisuus, it's pitching the idea first and then submitting the finished article and then it's published. But yeah, and I don't know if some of you has some other thoughts about this one.
I think it depends whether you've actually covered the story and think, oh, I could sell this, versus, hey, that may be an interesting story. I'll find out first whether they would take it before I do it. So my experience is it depends on the situation.
I would like to add that in terms of digital news, it's fast and furious. So in my experience, it's better to send in a completed story, because if the digital editors see it and like it, they'll put it on immediately before another freelancer does the story or before a staff member does the story. So it works well for me, sending a story immediately. And if they like it, it's published right there and then.
There you go. So I'll take the privilege of the last question. Why are kittens so popular?
Why
Come on, somebody tell me, why are kittens so popular?
That
Nobody
is
has
something that science have not yet answered.
figured out.
Yeah, and I think, yeah, one of the most popular articles from Maaseudun Tulevaisuus last year was this cat that had a friendship with another animal. I think it was a cow. And I think that's one also very popular sub-genre, that there is some animal that has friendship with some other different species animal, and then everybody loves that for some reason. But yeah, I don't know, but I like cats though.
Don't we all? Don't we all? Especially on Zoom when they cross your desk. Any other questions? Please remember that next Monday at the same time will be a presentation on the latest research in cloning. It will be in Spanish, but there will be simultaneous translation into English. So I think it will be an interesting presentation. You can find the link in the IFAJ website, and you can register for that. Any last words, Steve?
Just to thank Tuulikki for just a phenomenal presentation. It is always exciting to learn from smart people. And I know I personally am going to be making better headlines and committing fewer deadly sins, I hope. So you've inspired me, and I think probably everyone else as well. So thank you for presenting, and thanks to everybody for being part of this.
Thank you very much it was nice to see you even like this. It feels very nice. I hope we can meet live.
I agree.
Soon. Okay, thank you everybody for participating. The recording will be posted in a couple of days on the website, and we'll send out a link. And we look forward to seeing you both online and in person again soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks,
Bye,
everybody.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.